Good morning, everybody. My name is Anthony Kazazis, and I am the director of the NYC Network Group, as well as the NYC Real Estate Expo. Our sponsor today is DMG Investments. DMG Investments, founded in 2013, headquartered in New York. DMG Investments is a leading global real estate investment management development firm focusing on student housing, condominium, multifamily, and modular construction. By combining the joint expertise of their talented people, they offer clients a vertical integrated investment platform, resulting in outstanding reliability and the prospect of share growth. In this winter webinar series with DMG Investments, they'll show us how to navigate the current market and analyze the challenges of opportunities in 2021. This series will guide participants on new innovations in construction and offer insight on investment strategies in multifamily assets, challenges and opportunities for new developments, as well as techniques for new sales and marketing strategies will be discussed. Today, we have three special guest speakers. We have Gunter Grant Geiger, founder and CEO of EIR Healthcare, Roy Gallifie, project executive of OmniBuild, and Joseph Manzo, vice president of construction at DMG Investments. The first topic of the first webinar series is Part 1, DMG's Real Estate Future, Modular Housing and New Innovations in Construction. Today, we'll talk about the impact of COVID-19, how to better manage the construction process, how to better manage cost and operations, what green materials can be utilized for the future, and what's the future of modular and what's next. So at this point, and right after all the topics, of course, we're going to open up to Q&A at the end. So please prepare to send your questions in. So at this point, I'd like to have each speaker just give us a brief little short bio of each other, and we're going to start off with Grant, on your short little bio.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, and good morning, everybody. So obviously, Grant Geiger, CEO and founder of EIR Healthcare. We're a firm that's focused on the design and engineering of modular products for the healthcare industry. And so what that means, and we'll obviously get into some more of that today, but as an example, we're working on a 10,000 square foot medical office building in Brooklyn that will be breaking ground next year. And our focus is trying to find ways to continue to bring modular products and technology into the real estate industry.
Thank you, Grant. Roy?
Thank you, Anthony. Hello, everyone. My name is Roy Gallifie. I've been in the industry for longer than I care to remember, nearly 35 years. I started off working for a large union contractor for the first 25 years of my career, both high-end commercial interior renovations, residential renovations, and very large commercial and residential building construction. For the past 8 years, I've been working in the open shop field. OmniBuild is an open shop CM general contractor. It's grown quite a bit, and we've been fortunate enough to be associated with some very iconic projects, working with the likes of Bjarke Ingels, the old Guatney Siegel Group, and now we're engaged in building the second largest hotel to be built in New York City by key since the Marriott Marquis. It's over 1,000+ room hotel, which is a testament to the confidence and hope that we all should be sharing for the future of this city and this country, I hope.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you. Joseph?
I think I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. So my name is Joe Manzo, and I'm the Vice President of Construction for DMG Investments, with the responsibility of managing all aspects of the construction arm of DMG. At DMG, we've been in the market space of student housing for several years now, with properties in Albany, Ithaca, Houston, South Carolina, and a property open up shortly in Buffalo. I should start by saying that all the information that I'm about to show is available on our website, either on DMG Investments or on Ordin Living, our student housing brand. And you'll see those sites, they have a lot more greater detail than just this fast little slideshow. This is actually a video, although you can't see it. It's on our website if you go there. It was taken at a grand opening of ours at a property down in Spartanburg, South Carolina, which we're very proud of. We just opened. It serves the University of South Carolina upstate location, where we have approximately 400 beds. This next slide talks a little bit about guidance for coronavirus, and obviously we've had to attend to all the issues associated with keeping our facilities clean and safe and providing proper environment for all our residences. There's been a lot of challenges over the past several months, which I'm sure we're all going to be talking about. At one juncture, we weren't sure what was going to happen in the fall, and now here we are in the fall, and seems like we're doing very well. This next slide is just a listing of our student housing portfolio. As you can see, we are nationally placed, and we continue to increase our market share overall. This next slide just lists some basic facts about the number of locations that we have, our unit counts, our bed counts, our growth ratio. Our current strategy is to bring on 2 or more student housing facilities per year, and we're on track to do this, again, in places like Buffalo, Ithaca, Albany. We're really looking at other locations as well nationally. The next series of slides really addresses particular locations that we've done. This one happens to be of our Ordin Albany facility, which has been up and running for over 2 years now. And again, despite COVID, has a very high level of occupancy. As you can see, we're using best practices in some of the photos, and the students have been very understanding and cooperative in this challenging time. Across the board, actually, what we're seeing is that despite most university classes being online, students still want to be close to the university, close to the school's assets, and continue their relationships both on campus and off campus. And that's what we're finding really at all of our properties. This next slide is a great shot of our Ordin upstate facility again in South Carolina. We have 7 buildings there, including a clubhouse with a primary office space. Units there range from 2 bedrooms all the way up to 5-bedroom suites that we've designed specifically for the sports teams. Basketball and volleyball are really big there. It's a really great complex. We just finished that this past summer. This is Ordin Houston. And again, you can tell that there's a lot of effort that goes into the detail and design of our properties. And our student population really enjoys this property. And again, it's doing quite well. This is Ordin Ithaca. This was actually a value add. So we purchased this property a few years back and did a major renovation, improving the overall design and condition of the units. It's doing extremely well. I think around 96% occupancy. We're really very excited about Ithaca right now. We have an adjacent property that we're looking to develop with additional student housing. We're right adjacent to Cornell, and we typically like to do that. We like to position ourselves with a short walk from campus. In this case, we're less than a block away, and the property again is doing extremely well and well placed with Cornell. This is Ordin Buffalo. This is the one that's currently under construction and is anticipated to be complete in July of 2021, so next summer. My team and I are working very hard to finish this. Has great amenities. Not only do we have a large gym and swimming pool, but what the really special thing about this property is we're building an ice skating rink, which is actually significant in the Buffalo market. It's just a really cool facility. And finally, we're not just limited to student housing. We also do condominiums, one park, Cliffside Park, New Jersey, and multifamily housing. We're fairly diverse in our outlook, although student housing is definitely a strong component of what we do here. We're vertically integrated, so all of our various departments, financing and acquisition, construction, marketing, and property management, all work together with one another and support one another. So that's, it's great to be able to rely on everyone as a team. If you want to get in touch with us, if you have any questions at all, you can definitely contact myself or really anyone else at DMG. These are 2 people that are listed, Doug and Jeff. But you can go to to dmginvestments.com or audenliving.com, and that'll give you a good sense of what we're about. So thank you very much.
Very impressive. Thank you, Joseph. And we'll make sure that everybody here has all your contact information as well after this, after the webinar. So we'll make sure that all goes out to everybody, including the edited video itself. Let's get started, and let's start off with Grant. Grant, define modular. What is modular?
That's the $1 million question. You know, when I get asked that question, you know, what I like to usually say is, if I take the, you know, what are we at, 68 participants? So if for all of you that are listening in today, you know, if I asked all of you to close your eyes and picture a dog, you would all picture a dog. The reality is, though, you would all probably pick a different type of dog. And the reality for modular is similar. Modular can be defined in many different ways. The truth is, between volumetric modular, which is giving you complete buildings, Anthony, all the way down to individual components, modular construction can be anywhere from 10 to upwards of 90% of a building. So for, you know, what we're seeing in the industry, what we're seeing for us specifically in healthcare and then in other sectors, is that number can change, and it depends on the requirements of the clients. It depends on the local municipalities of where you're building. But you could look at a building today and you actually, in many cases, wouldn't be able to tell if it's modular or if it was stick built on site, because of the way that modular has advanced.
That's very good. Grant, another question. In your eyes, okay, in your eyes, for the last 5 years, how has modulars changed?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess kind of leading to that first one, I mean, I think, you know, what we've seen is it's really broadened. You know, I think if you take a look at, for example, trade groups like Modular Building Institute, which we're a member, you know, groups have talked about, you know, the analysis has been that modular has been in the single digits for construction in terms of use across the country for quite some time. But now, over the last 5 years, Anthony, it's been increasing into double digits. So it's going to probably cross, if it hasn't this year, in the next few years, probably cross over 10% of all projects, all starts in the US will have some part of modular construction in it. And so how it's changed in 5 years specifically is looking at sub-assemblies, right? Looking at things like MEP systems. Those racks can be built off-site. Looking at wall assemblies, how those are done. If you look at some of the work that some modular companies have worked on, it's really taking a kit of parts approach and finding ways to deconstruct what that building ends up looking like, but doing it in an off-site way. So I think that that focus of individual parts and pieces and sub-assemblies has been probably one of the biggest areas of growth for modular construction.
Interesting. Stepping over into construction, Joseph, how has COVID-19 affected construction costs throughout the 2020, this roller coasting year of all this craziness?
Yeah, we've seen some you know, crazy things. Again, roller coaster is a good way to describe 2020. In terms of lumber, we've seen 50 to 80% increase in pressure treated lumber, and this, you know, I've said before, it's stretched well beyond where this panel is really talking about, and it's reached the regular Joe. You know, you look at Home Depot or Lowe's, there's just no available stock. Even months later, although finally things are beginning to come back, and prices are coming down and supplies are beginning to catch up. Again, supply chains are really just thrown for a loop for the last 9 months in general. There's been shortages in commodities, all sorts of commodities. We've also seen a 40% increase in concrete costs over the last few months. So again, those supply chains are really just a challenge. Recently, someone mentioned to me mattresses and furniture are going to be the next hot thing. So go out and purchase your mattresses and your furnitures. Yeah, immediately, because you know, those things are just getting swamped. I mean, look, I actually recently purchased a fire pit, and something like that you can't get them anymore. It's almost like you know, I've obtained the impossible by buying this for my family. So things like that never had lead times at all of a sudden have these huge lead times. But we're seeing some costs come down. And you really want to select your contractor right now, I think, as early as possible to help get on top of these things as soon as possible. I mean, I'm sure Roy deals with that probably a lot more than any one of the other two of us on this panel, where it's really important to just get linked up with an owner as soon as possible and try to bring on the subcontractors as soon as possible. And again, start looking at those long lead lists, because those lists have grown astronomically over the last few months.
Amazing. Staying with challenges, what are the biggest challenges, over the next 6 to 8 months due to COVID? What are they? Talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah, we've been very lucky, to be honest. We've had high occupancy again in spite of COVID-19, which is really a remarkable feat, considering where things have been. But again, obviously, some of the difficulties that we're dealing with are how to keep HVAC systems clean, how to keep facilities clean. I've been reaching out to a lot of different people on LinkedIn to try to find out, which is I personally find it a great source in terms of finding different products and availabilities. It's kind of become the digital version of Blue Book for us. You could reach out to somebody very quick and find out very quick about a product. In fact, just the other day I did it, and a day later I've got that information in front of me. But again, COVID's a hot topic. It's definitely has had its challenges with us.
Thank you, Joseph. Roy, how can we use our current resources, staff and technology, more efficiently and more effectively right now?
Well, I think a return to some basics in terms of our individual skills and practices is long overdue. Talking about having our staff be knowledgeable on what's in someone's scope, how to assess shop drawings that are coming in. There are so many avenues that we can mitigate the issues that are going to result from, as Joe was pointing out, some of the lead times for items that we were not used to having long lead times for. Making sure that we get our details correct from a design point, whether it's working with the architects and designers early on, and then cultivating a stable of trade contractors that understand the scopes for the individual projects and how it's going to be communicated. We have to increase our ability to communicate. Let's face it, we're in a business where we manage people. Yes, the details are tough and some of the jobs are more challenging and the logistics are challenging, but we have to learn to have our people take more ownership on the skill sets that are required to get the work done. And we all have to pay a lot more attention now to the impact of supply chain management, folks who may be traveling or not from different areas and their feelings of safety. But by returning to basic skills and keeping the focus on what brought us all to the level we're at, I think there's definitely hope for keeping up with the difficulties and the challenges and kind of reassessing where we stand. Same thing with technology. We all use some form of a project management software. Well, learn the system that you're working with better. You can. There's so many efficiencies that can be found within what we already have at our fingertips, and with a little bit of combination of people with experience and some of the new blood that's coming into the business, I think we can establish that. And maybe going back to some apprenticeships, whether it's within offices or a mix of field and office. I think we can definitely see some room for growth and improvement, at the skill level of our managers and even those who are executing our work.
Yeah, Roy, I think I would just add to that. I mean, I think I completely agree with both you and Joseph. I think COVID, obviously the pandemic has been an accelerant for a lot of these things. And specifically, I think technology and supply chain logistics are two that are really key, regardless of actually really what you're building or how you're building it.
Right.
It's really about trying to really tighten those partnerships because, even if it is, like I said, for us, even if it is modular, right, we still are working with CMs, construction, firms, and we all have to find a way to still deliver a project at the end of the day. And the pandemic is not making it any different. So.
Yeah, I mean, our method of communication now is what we're doing right now. We're Zoom meetings and go-to meetings, and just like this blended learning is maybe affecting our children in terms of how they interact and maybe missing those social interaction skills. We at least have a strong memory of what it was like to be in groups and to chat and to work things out face to face. We have to kind of embrace that memory and bring it to what we do every day. I try to, I may be coming off a little dry right now, but Joe knows me a long time. I try to inject some humor into everything I do because life is short. We're in a tough business. It's high stress. But if you keep an even perspective and you act proactively, there's a lot of fun to be had and definitely a lot of pride to be taken in what we do.
Yeah, thank you, Roy. Roy, one of our attendees wasn't able to jump on this live webinar, George Eliopoulos from Velios Capital, but he sent in a question. So we're going to stay with you. How does the blended workplace necessitated by pandemic safety guidelines affect the dynamic of construction project stakeholders, interaction, and communication?
Well, like I was saying earlier, where we used to be able to sit around, these types of talks were had at a round table, right? We'd all be sitting at a table, looking at each other, shaking hands. That the interaction that you have when you're face to face with people, the facial gestures, nuances of conversation, a lot of that is lost with the way we have to communicate now. So you really have to dig deep and remember that you're managing people, working with people. You have to learn how to over communicate, but in a way that's accessible and kind to people. I recently read, again, being an old timer, I recently read that using punctuation in a text is considered hostile.
Nice.
I was taken aback by that. So, having some young children and grandchildren, I'm very sensitive to how words and sentences are interpreted or misinterpreted. And I think because of the fact that we're social distancing and being responsible that way, we all have to kind of dig deep again and relearn proper methods of communication, how to properly listen, to make, and also to vet out that what you think you're saying clearly and has complete clarity to you, that same clarity is being imparted to the people you're dealing with. It's a lot easier said than done, but it's a skill that we're going to lose if we don't all pay strong attention to it. And the best way for anything to be successful is to be able to communicate with your stakeholders, your owners, your contractors. Everyone understands what the goals are. The biggest little side tracks and detours we get is when we think we're being clear about a communication and it's just not being heard. An email is sent and not responded to. We have to remember how to pick up a phone and have clear conversation with someone. Listen and then speak.
Yeah, I just want to jump in. I mean, communication is so key. And I miss you. You hit on a lot of good points. There's actually courses now on doing these Zoom calls about how to communicate properly. And you notice a lot of people kind of over speak and talk over each other. And in a face-to-face, that doesn't always happen. You kind of know when the person's taking a pause, and in Zoom calls, you almost just kind of jump right in and say what you're going to say. But I miss a handshake, a simple thing like a handshake in the beginning or an end of a meeting. Looking someone in the eye and shaking their hand. It probably is an old school way of thinking, but to me, it's kind of an important thing to start and end a meeting that way. And now, how do we, like you said, how do we move forward?
It's very true, Joseph. That was our slogan for the expo. There's just no substitute to a handshake.
Right.
And you're right, 1000%. Grant, what are the biggest challenges right now with developers and builders they're facing, to build a building, of course, a modular, of course, in New York City?
Well, I think I'm sure I would like to hear Roy's perspective on this as well, but I'll throw in our two cents.
Sure.
I think, obviously a couple things. One is, from a modular standpoint, our biggest issue always is logistics, right? We're working with a limited amount of space, little amount of maneuverability. And, we've actually had some situations with our projects where we have gone around to look at different manufacturers who are providing us, again, like as I said earlier, sub-assemblies or components, not based on their price necessarily, but based on how close they are to the final job site, which is kind of a crazy idea, but there is a premium for that.
It's not crazy.
Yeah, so that's one thing. And then I think, and then generally speaking, I think I will say one thing. I don't think the city has done any better or worse in terms of, at least from my perspective, for what I've seen in terms of approval process, right? Things stopped. We had a huge problem back in March and April, June, we weren't sure where we were going. New York City was an epicenter for obviously cases and so forth. But I think we've, as a city, again, collectively tried to do our best and come together and get things through. And I do see things now loosening up again in terms of our build. So I think that's not a bad thing. And I'm hoping, and I think so far the finance piece of it is also moving that way as well, and supporting projects, trying to get them back online for the ones where shovels weren't in the ground. So.
Joseph, did you want to touch on that? Yes, please.
Yeah, go ahead, Roy.
Well,
Roy, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Just, to kind of take off on what Grant was saying about the logistics, New York City is tight. So like I said before, our claim to fame is being able to work in those tight conditions. We've done the same thing. We've focused more on local manufacturers. We just awarded a huge window contract to someone who wasn't the best price. However, based on the proximity to the site of their manufacturing facility, we felt that was the prudent way to go, because they manufacture extrusions locally. The glass is made locally. So again, we may not have achieved the best price point. However, on the flip side, on the purchasing we're doing on this job, and it's probably based on the fact that there is not a lot of jobs being awarded, especially of this size, we're finding an incredible savings on overall procurement. The subcontractor, the proper subcontractors, those who are a bit well-heeled, who are looking to just sustain their staff and business, are very aggressive in negotiations. So it's making for a surprisingly good turn in terms of budget compliance, something that we were looking forward to, because look, Grant, you as an owner, Joseph, you as an owner, you're in a position of power, and you can, because you're granting those contracts. Maybe grant is not the right word, but certainly you are the buyer, and you sit with the cards. So and in our case, even though we're doing it on behalf of an owner, we also have the cards when we're trying to find the right contractors for the right price. And again, we're surprisingly finding that although the commodity prices are higher, the contractors are taking a much more aggressive stance to their margins so that they could secure a project. And I think that bodes well for all of us.
And we saw similar things back in 2012 also, right when things dipped around 2009, 2010. And then when things started getting back on the rise, you saw the same type of thing where very qualified subcontractors and contractors just really needed the work, and so they were willing to take a cut on their own internal profits, overhead and profit, and work with everybody. So there was some good cost savings back then, and we're seeing the same thing now.
Yep.
Brian, are there certain projects that modulars are better suited for?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think generally speaking, we don't really consider modular for anything that is, so just like this is a common sense concept to start with, right? Anything that's large open spaces, right? So we're not going to be, I think pretty much rarely see modular being used for open spaces like auditoriums, school area supporting like cafeterias or things like that. It just doesn't make sense. But that also, I've actually seen that sort of extend as well into the office space. I mean, and that's an interesting conversation because the office space, as we know, has also seen a complete reimagining into this open floor plan concept. And open floor plan, whether or not that sticks around, I honestly have no clue, but that actually has changed the opportunity for modular being, I think, useful because you're not putting as much into that space as you used to. So I think those types of projects, we generally are not looking for modular. We're not even considering it, or we're seeing a lower usage. But going the other way, healthcare, multifamily, that's where it really student housing, these types of projects is where it makes the most sense. So.
And Grant, where we were talking before, modular has changed so much in the last few years. It doesn't mean, it used to mean shoddy construction or trailers,
right?
Right.
And now it's quite the opposite. It means quality control, and in recent years, some incredibly high-end projects. I mean, look what's going on in Brooklyn and Manhattan in terms of these local markets. Yep. The high-end architectural market has really embraced it. And for us in student housing, if we miss a deadline, the project's dead. We deliver these projects in July. If we delivered a project in September, we'd have an empty facility. So it's for us going forward, all of our future projects are being designed around a modular platform. And it's a different perspective on how we arrive at our solution and deal with our approach of construction. It's a far more advanced product where there are less variables and less unknowns.
Sure.
We don't want to fight with weather, fight with labor shortages, fight with quality deficiencies. We want a superior product in a time frame that we can control and a cost that we can control. And modular housing is a manufacturing process as opposed to a traditional construction process. And so it runs on the same constraints that large-scale manufacturing does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Buying materials as a commodity rather than buying materials off the shelf, which we talked about in those particular problems right now in COVID. So, I think all these topics kind of crashing together all at once, and it's where I see things.
No, I completely agree. I think this. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just because you both made great points, and one of the things, Grant, that you started off by saying is that the modular component of a particular project varies by project. And I think what a lot of people need to realize is that you can get the benefit of the modular if you be specific and approach it where if 10% of your project, if that means you're going to have some preformed plank, or I had a former colleague make a comment while you were speaking, and he's involved with the pre-built office market for a while, and the need for pre-built telephone kiosk or telephone areas, phone call areas, conference centers, break rooms. There's an opportunity now to satisfy a need. And again, just by keeping it to a percentage or a portion of an overall project. So there's a lot of opportunity to come.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point, Roy. And I also think, I mean, going back to Joe, your comment, I think ultimately, if I had to sort of narrow down, I think the one I would say advantage, at least that I've seen across the board for why you look at modular, it has to be the schedule, right? I mean, every time I'm talking to a client, if it's healthcare, if it's a hospital CEO, or if it's a developer of multifamily, or it doesn't matter. But if I can say, we're working on this project and it's going to deliver this in X amount of time, and that X is so much better for you than Y, which was stick built, then let's find a way to do that together, right? It's not necessarily that we're changing, at the end of the day, you still get a building, right? But it's just about how we want to sequence that process. And I think to your comment, it's a manufacturing, problem as opposed to a construction, as an on-site problem. So.
Yeah, and I think other developers as well are starting to understand the benefits. You might not save $1 on the construction end. You might even be a small uptick on the construction end, but you guarantee a delivery date, and you're getting into a building. That old phrase, time is money. Well, getting in sooner is where you don't lose the money. And you're meeting the deadline. And again, in selfishly speaking, in the student housing market, you're all about deadlines. There can be no delay to the deliverable. Otherwise, the job financially is done.
Joseph, this is probably the most important question out there, and many want to hear about your thoughts. How are the interior air quality concerns being addressed on your projects? Job sites in the age of COVID, of course. This is a serious question.
Yeah. Well, mold has been a hot topic for several years now, and now COVID is hot. We've been very proactive in changing filters and cleaning. Typically, students, fortunately enough, don't typically complain about air quality, but we're very concerned about it. In the student housing, we have this bed bath parity. And it's great from a COVID perspective, because really, if you think about where you're most vulnerable, it's in a bathroom situation. So we're seeing 1 and 2 bedroom units are very popular versus some of the larger ones, and interest in the outdoor space. But again, I wear two hats almost, as a registered architect and as a builder. Interior air quality is becoming such a hot topic. And we're at such an interesting crossroads right now. We're at a time where we're making a choice between opening a window or creating a sealed building for efficiency. And it's, managing ventilation rates is becoming a part of our everyday world. And you see that in facade design, you see that in everywhere, and even in how that kind of parlays into these net zero carbon neutral products and topics. And I'm sure we're going to start getting into that.
Staying with you again, Joseph, how has the goal of net zero carbon neutral products choices changed construction?
Well, again, another hot topic, right? Green buildings, building green. And I've said before, like even a product, and you don't even think about it sometimes because you use these every day. But hardy board, and that's a trade name, so it's like saying Scotch tape. But either way, it's a cementitious board where you're eliminating a wood product with the cementitious man-made product with a green fact, right? And the everyday homeowner is using something like that in lieu of like a wood shake. And for us, we're working in collaboration with universities. These ideas of these indoor gardens, urban farms, which we're looking to introduce in some of our projects. But you look at how material has changed. Look at the evolution of the wall. That started. I live in a 100-year-old house. Not the most luxurious, but the siding below the siding is lapped boards, and then in the 60s you started looking at plywood, and then in the 70s you started looking at OSB, and OSB. Think about that, from the 70s is really, what is it? It's just scrap boards, right? It's leftover scrap. So it's an incredibly green material. It was just the kind of the start of everything. Now we're going into dense glass and zip walls, and these zip walls where, again, a trade name, but where it's got this membrane already applied to it, So you're skipping a step, and you're trying to be as green as possible in terms of material usage and wastes. So all that's really really interesting.
Great. Thank you, Joseph. We're going to finish up with Roy with 2 questions, and then we're going to get right into questions and answers because we have about 7 questions. So what's Roy, how do investors and developers accurately evaluate the cost effectiveness and risk related to new technology and construction methods?
Well, it kind of goes back to some of the old questions. It's like when someone walks up to you and says, you know, how much did it cost to build a building? How much per square foot? You know, it's a multifaceted question. Goes back to even what Joe and Grant were chatting about in terms of the cost of modular. To evaluate any of the risks and costs and methods, you have to do a deep dive into the details. What's your intended use? What's your design intent? And all the factors that play into not being able to just straightforward ask how much should this building cost per square foot, or how much should a building cost per square foot. It gets even more detail oriented when you try to answer that question. You know, you really have to use your skills. You have to, as Joe said, you have to put on a couple of different hats and explore your use. What is your end game on the property in order to evaluate your operational costs and your construction costs and your timelines? And, you know, having some breadth of experience in order to take in all the factors will help you do that. The risk factors we were talking about earlier, like, you know, for people to embrace modular or modular components within a project, too often we because it's so new, we have to rely on a sales pitch to kind of describe the benefits. Well, fortunately, I think for those of us on this panel, we've had enough experience that we know how to sift through the smoke and mirrors in order to make some determinations. And again, depending on what the end game intent is of a particular owner, I think you analyze the products to be used and the methods to be used accordingly to see how you achieve that goal at the best possible price and in the best possible timeline.
Thank you, Roy. Last question of the webinar. Roy, how does the adoption of a stricter energy compliance codes by local building departments redefine materials specified and building system design? Well,
for those of us, you know, who are used to the LEED designations that kind of began when the U.S. Green Building Council came about, and rightfully so, we all became more conscious of the environment and our effect on it. A lot of local municipalities have adopted the guidelines, and maybe it's subtle to us and not so subtle to those of us who are affected by energy code compliance. Energy code compliance in New York City has become a very, very strictly controlled requirement, from the insulation that's used on the exterior of a building that's adjacent to another, to, you know, the use of green roofs. And it's the impact is that back when things started, there was this point system, and there still is, and you would achieve LEED silver, LEED green, LEED gold, LEED platinum. Now, most of the mechanical systems in a building are designed with efficiencies where your building is automatically LEED silver. And that used to be something that was hard to achieve. Well, now it's become a matter of common practice that mechanical systems are designed in conjunction with the facade systems to achieve that LEED silver. So now you can move your focus onto sustainable products in the buildings. As Joe was pointing out, the use of different materials to build walls and ceilings. It shows how, like, the partnership and common strive, the common goal of trying to reduce the carbon emissions, reduce energy consumption. it's really become a public-private partnership type thing where the municipalities have gotten on board. I don't believe it's put that much of an extra strain on costs because operationally, the efficiencies pay for themselves. So it's been it's an interesting evolution, and to see that the municipalities are kind of enforcing it without it being a headline is helping towards that goal.
Gentlemen, very informative, great webinar. Thank you very much. Guys, we're going to get right into the questions and answers here. So this is going to, anybody feel free to jump in, okay? Rohit Malik, hi, this is a question for any of the speakers. The commercial real estate has been due to a correction for some time. Has the pandemic accelerated this? A correction can also be seen as an opportunity for investments. What areas of the commercial real estate are opportunities for investment in 2021 above and beyond? What has brought up on this webinar, of course, and what are the areas that you do foresee to rebound in the near future? And anybody can answer this. And if you want me to read it over again, let me know.
Okay.
I'll
Joseph, go ahead, Grant. Yeah,
I was just going to say
in your wheelhouse as well.
A little bit. Yeah, I was going to say, actually, Roy, we were talking about this before we got started on the call. Even I think one of them that's most interesting is going to be the retail space. So the malls, shopping malls, strip malls, these places that are going to be reimagined, right? I think, everyone has the expectation that when there is a correction, there's winners and losers, and that certainly is the case. But a lot of these physical spaces, it's not like they're just going to disappear, right? It's not poof, they're gone. It's just what are they going to look like? And so I think that's one of the most interesting places to watch. And I'll give you an example of where that's sort of manifested. So take a look at, for example, and I'm thinking about it from a healthcare standpoint, but think about what Walmart has done with the health clinics inside their stores. So if you guys check that out, look at it, they've actually taken a percentage of their stores and they've started rolling out health clinics, think like urgent cares within their Walmart superstores or supercenters, whatever they're called. So I think that's like, we're going to continue to see more changes like that in the retail space. So that's one.
I'd like to continue the conversation Grant and I were having before we started. Again, I've been speaking with someone who invests heavily in real estate outside of New York, and their vision of the reimagining of those strip malls and mall sites that are being abandoned are self-contained communities, some larger than others, where there would be social facilities, of course, living facilities, urgent cares. So if anyone knows of Battery Park City, how it began and kind of now then became its own enclave, well, that is what some people are imagining in these retail sites.
And look, anything could be reimagined, right? I mean, again, I don't know who's on the webinar. I'm sure we're far-reaching beyond New York, and sometimes New Yorkers tend to just talk about New York. But if you do look just at New York, you look at 9/11, how yes, the city was never the same, but the city rebounded. Sandy, again, the city was never the same, but it rebounded. This is, people right now talking, oh, the city's dead. It's not dead. It's just in the middle of a transformation. Where's it going to go from here? Commercial real estate. Yes, that's definitely probably problematic, but I'm sure there's a lot of people thinking various ways of how to, like Grant said, reimagine those spaces into something, again, because you can't just make those spaces disappear. And the truth is, there are some great deals to be made. So hopefully there's great people that have great ideas that are able to get a hold of projects now and properties and then start the redevelopment process. And the rethinking, and I'm sure there's plenty of thought going into that right now of how these spaces are going to be reimagined. Again, it's just, people always talk about New York City and how it's you blink an eye and something's changing. Well, that's what's going on right now. It's just changing and evolving into something else.
Great.
Well said.
Rohit Malik has actually two more questions. Why has Modular gained traction in the recent years? By how much does modular accelerate the construction timelines? Are there other benefits of modular construction?
So I guess I'm happy to jump in on this one first. I think, we kind of touched on some of these points earlier, but I'll go quickly. So first of all, I think modular's gained traction in recent years. I think a lot of it's been driven primarily from a technology standpoint. I think, Joe, you mentioned this before from a quality QA process. We have some manufacturing partners where I can actually dial in live and see what they're doing in real time at their site right now. And I know what the quality process is, and that's being driven by software, right? So I think, we talk about how modular has been around, and, it goes back to William Scotsman trailers and Sears and Roebuck kit homes, which is 100 years old. But what's happened in the last 5 to 10 years is what's really pushing it. And regarding the schedule change, we were part of a study with KPMG, and I think others did this about a year or two ago, where they came out and said that as a baseline, modular approaches to construction are going to reduce timelines somewhere between 30 to 50%. So, we're actually working on a project with a health system in upstate New York, and the architect of record for that independently benchmarked modular versus traditional, and calculated that it was 40% faster for them to consider modular construction of their ED as opposed to building it on site. So, I think the numbers are significant, and it does make a difference.
It's interesting, again, just to touch base on this, how modular has changed. It used to be that they built a box, whether it be steel or wood, and it was one way. And they would then try to force it into a project, and that just doesn't work. And manufacturers today, I think, are realizing that they need to bend around the client and developer and the end user and work with them. But more importantly, the savvy developer, I think, is understanding what works to make something modular, to go down from station to station, and how to work within those confines to come up with, again, great architecture.
One more question from Roland Malik. Have you considered cost segregation on your completed projects? Why not?
To my colleagues, I'm not certain how the term cost segregation
Cost segregation. You know what? We could research it. We got 8 more questions here, and we could get back, and I'll make sure that Ro reaches out to you guys, and he can ask that question to you separately.
That's a lesson in communication, everyone. When you don't understand the questions, don't be shy to ask.
Oh, I know Ro. He's really a smart fella. It could be a great added addition to your firms. Definitely. Jeff Saraveza, I hope I pronounced your name right. I apologize if I didn't. What bottlenecks in the modular needs to overcome to increase market share? You mentioned local sourcing. Is there a need for a large increase in local modular factories, similar to the need for local Amazon distribution centers?
That's a really good question. Short answer to that is I think yes. I mean, I will say at the same time, I think there's another piece to this, which Jeff, you may have also been thinking of, which is I think there's plenty of, at least in my mind, I don't have a shortage of partners that I can find for subs to get work done. It's also, part of it is maybe having more Amazon type distribution centers, but it's also having the partners that I already work with think about and find ways to adopt modular practices in what they're already doing. I don't want to take them out of the picture. I just want to help them and have them adopt it in a certain way, and that would lessen the need for us to create something new. So,
I've always heard the magic formula for modular construction was roughly 500 miles from the factory to the site. So within that zone is really where you want to be, because the one downside of modular is really the shipping costs. So and the shipping is really where you can see a very large uptick and where a job could start exceeding conventional construction costs. So if you can keep the factory within 500 miles of the site, now again, thinking New York City, you need to now figure out where you're going to build a factory within 500 miles that's accessible to getting commodities, right? Wood and steel and all these materials, getting it delivered to it, but then also getting the finished product, the end product, to the site.
Yep.
So that's, again, this
Yep.
500-mile radius is.
Just a final on Jeff's question, is there a need for more facilities? Just to piggyback on Grant, you need more facilities that are adaptable. And once it catches on more, then the need for more facilities may just be a product of the supply and demand. But perfecting or modifying the present deliverable so that it's more flexible, I think is the challenge. And I think with the demand increasing, that challenge could be met.
Guys, I'm going to stay with Jeff. Are there an adequate supply of experienced, qualified modular designers?
No, I don't think so. I think we need more of them for sure.
Okay. Guys, I'm going to ask you to answer this question with Paul Brown. Please describe the exact savings and impact to construction costs and timelines on a dollar per square foot basis. Paul Brown.
It's one of those questions of how much does a building cost per square foot? Grant, I'll give this one to you.
Off of a sketch.
Yeah, I mean, so it depends, right? I mean, and here's how I'll break it down for you guys, and this could be a whole.
We're gonna hold you to it.
Yeah, it could be a whole webinar.
It's a whole different webinar. Right.
Just for this. So I think if we take, Joe, your comment about 500 miles radius, so let's assume a couple constants in this equation. Generally what we're saying is if you're doing wood, okay, because you have to think about what type of use. Is it wood? Is it steel? What are you actually building? You're going to see prices somewhere between, and this is, I'm talking about for the work that I do, Philadelphia, New York, metro area, we're looking at 180, 190 on the low end. And that's a finished product that's going to your door. There's probably going to be some additional costs there for some installation and things like that. And then if you're talking about steel, you're talking about healthcare, which is where I do spend most of my time. That's going to be in the high twos, low threes, somewhere in that range, depending on the use case of what you're trying to build a square foot. And it can go higher. So if you're talking about something in Manhattan, on the island, or in markets like in LA, for example, we've looked at some projects there with health systems. They will be north of $400 a square foot because of the challenges like Joe and Roy were talking about earlier with logistics and other things. So yeah, try to do my best there with that question, but yeah.
Joseph, you may need to answer this one. Danny Grossthart, how will developers address the conflicting priorities between the new energy laws and increased ventilation and air purification in buildings?
Yeah, I think Roy touched on that a little bit before, how those two kind of go hand in hand. I think local codes are kind of, I don't want to use the word forcing, but they're making those changes for everybody. And I think all these new projects are going in that direction. So I don't think there's anything radical there.
But to that point, Joe, there are some I was just introduced to something very simple and quite elegant in the way a filter in a heat pump unit was to the patent out on an ionization ability of the filter to kill like 99.9% of the coronavirus. And it was a very, very simple application of an old technology that could have tremendous results. And again, it's like the old thing, we go back to basics. Necessity is the mother of invention. There are going to be, I think, some introduction of some innovative old products that are going to go a long way in helping to calm some fears and create some filtering of those fears that, are maybe simpler than we think.
Thank you, Roy. Guys, I got one last question, and that concludes. Ronald Lanzar, are any of the panelists members of the Modular Building Institute? We became members last February, and I highly recommend this organization.
Yep, I mentioned it earlier. We are. I would also echo those comments. It's a great organization. Definitely check them out.
All right, guys. again, this concludes. We're at the end, and I definitely want to thank our sponsor, DMG Investments.
Thank you.
Very, very, very great, informative webinar. Part 2 will be DMG's real estate future, new directions, and F&A in the multifamily assets. The date will be 11/19. We got about 2 weeks. And again, that's going to be an exciting webinar, and we love to see all you guys come back. Again, this concludes. I want to thank our speakers and thank all of our attendees. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thank
Have a good
you,
day, everybody.
Anthony.
Very much.
Thank you.